Shalom, and welcome to V'ahavta Yisrael, a Hebrew phrase which means, you shall love Israel. We hope you'll stay with us for the next 30 minutes as our teacher, Dr. Baruch, shares his expository teaching from the Bible. Dr. Baruch is the senior lecturer at the Zera Avraham Institute based in Israel. Although all courses are taught in Hebrew at the Institute, Dr. Baruch is pleased to share this weekly address in English. To find out more about our work in Israel, please visit us on the web at LoveIsrael.org. That's one word, LoveIsrael.org. Now, here's Baruch with today's lesson.
God is a giving God. And God gives according to His promises. What promises? His written promises. And where do we find His written promises? In His covenants. And that's why it's so important to be a member of His covenant people. And the best covenant that's made available, and it's available to all people, both Jew and Gentile alike, and that is that new covenant, that kingdom covenant. Well, we're going to be talking about a different covenant tonight. And that is that Abrahamic covenant, which is tied and related to that new covenant, but we're going to deal with promises that are uniquely related to the children of Jacob, precisely the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, I mentioned last week, and I want to do a little review, that we have seen Reuben and Gad receive their land. We've also emphasized Judah and also the tribe of Joseph, who is broken into two half-tribes, the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh. So we see these two half-tribes also receiving, and one of them being a key to keep the connection between those on the east side of the Jordan and those on the western side of the Jordan. That we do not break into two groups of people, but there is unity and there is a cohesiveness between all the tribes. Well, after these first four tribes, and I'm speaking about the order of inheritance, speaking about Reuben, Gad, Judah, and Joseph, not in the order of birth necessarily, but in the order of inheritance. We saw after these four tribes received their allotment of land that we moved to Benjamin and to Shimon, to Zebulun, and finally to Issachar. And now tonight there is three left. I'm speaking about Asher, Naphtali, and Dan. Now the tribe that we have mentioned, I haven't mentioned this one yet this evening, but the additional tribe is a tribe of the Levites, Levi. And this tribe had an inheritance, but not of land. Not an allotment of land, but of service in first the tabernacle and then in the tabernacle, or temple. But realize something, they also ministered continuously in their cities that belonged to the Levites. And there they would serve. Some would live in other places to have a greater influence upon all the children of Israel. So they were scattered throughout the land in Levitical cities. We'll talk about cities of refuge next week, how they related to Levite, the purpose of them, and so forth, but God's order. And you cannot help than seeing a precise, a detailed God in the distribution of land. As I said, three tribes tonight: the tribe of Asher, Naphtali, and Dan. Let's begin. Look with me, as I said, to Joshua chapter 19, and we're going to begin in that 24th verse, Joshua 19 and verse 24, where it says, "The fifth lot went out," and it says this was for the tribe of the children of Asher, for their families. Now, I don't want to mention right now a lot about that word family. Here it's in the plural, their families. But what's important is the family to God. And we see God working out the fulfillment of His promise, the promise of the land, which is a huge promise. it had a relevance for families. God works and moves in the family. We see that in Passover. We see how every household, every family was to observe the Passover. And if that family was too small, they would join together to form a small unit known as family. It's important to God. Look now to verse 25. And it came about their border, and we're going to see, for the most part, cities listed. But in addition to cities, sometimes we'll see the Jordan River mentioned, and other times we'll see the sea on the west, meaning the Mediterranean city, as part of its border. We'll come to that in a moment, but let's begin again, verse 25. And it came about their border, Chelkat, and Chali, and Vetan, and Ekshaf. Verse 26, additional cities, and Alamelech, and Amad, and Mishal. Now, that border continue on, and it says Pagah, which is it hit, meaning it came up to. It extended, it says, to the Carmel. Because of this word in Hebrew, Pagah, it doesn't take the term to, but at. It came to, it hit at, and we see this term Carmel. Carmel, we know that this is in the northern part of Israel as these tribes are receiving their land. Dan's going to be unique. We'll come to him at the end of our study. But we're dealing primarily tonight in the north part. And here, the Carmel is close to Haifa today. In fact, it's part of that city, Haifa. It goes beyond that, and it sits at the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, just like it says here when it says. It extended to the Carmel, and notice Ha-Yama, towards the sea or at the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. Also, it says that it touched where? Shechor Livnat. Now, I believe a few Bibles will say that this is the brook of Shechor Livnat. In my study, and perhaps my study was inadequate, I only saw this term in this context one time in this verse that we're looking at now. And I do not know why that term brook is added. It's not in the original language, but many add that in. And again, I do not know why they do. Perhaps, as I said, my study was inadequate. Perhaps someone who's listening can set me straight, and I would appreciate that. But in the meantime, let's press on. Verse 27. Again, the emphasis, Gavul, the border. And it says, and return, meaning it returned, the border, return in the opposite direction. And notice what it says, Mizrach Hashemesh. Now here, we're dealing with the shining of the sun. And in this context, we're dealing with it on the west and a place called Bet Dagon. And then it continues, it says, and it strikes, meaning it reaches to, it comes and hits the point that's also part of, it borders up to Zebulun at a place that we talked about last week at the valley of Yiftach El, which is towards the north. So that's the northern part of Zebulun, but we see that it's coming back for the tribe of Asher. It's moving the opposite way. The northern part for Zebulun, the opposite way for Asher. And this is true at Bet HaEmek, which is the house of the valley, and also Neiel. And it went forth to Kabul, which is from the left. So giving direction so we have a good understanding of this allotment I made mention last week. Although we don't know all of these cities, we get enough information to give a good indication for us of this allotment of land where it was. Verse 28. Additional cities. And Evron, and Rachov, and Chamon, and Cana, until Sidon, Now, this is important. Sidon. This goes all the way up further north into what is now modern Lebanon. And it says Sidon Rabbah, the greater part of Sidon. Verse 29. And then the border returned to Ramah unto the fortified city of Tsor. Now, Tsor is Tyre, another city that is connected to modern-day Lebanon. And it continued on. It returned more this border to Chosa. And there were its goings forth, meaning its conclusions, its ends at the sea, in the allotment of region, that territory of Achziva. So here we're dealing with a region that was called by that name, Achziva. Verse 30. Also Uma and Afek and Rehov. And then we're told the cities. How many cities have we mentioned? We're talking about 22 cities and their courtyards, these places of administration. Verse 31. For this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families, these cities and their courtyards. Again, courtyards, probably places that things were administered by each tribe. Let's move on to the allotment of land for Naphtali, verse 32. For the children of Naphtali went forth the sixth lot. For the children of Naphtali to their families. Verse 33. And it came about their border from Cheleph and from Alon. Now, Alon is a tree. Some will say oak tree. Some will give perhaps some Bibles a different name of a tree. That's fine. But from the tree that was in where? Sa'ananim. And it continued the same border, and it included Adami and the Nekev and Yavniel unto Lakum. And it came about that its endings, its conclusions, was the Jordan. So now, when we're dealing with Naphtali, we see that it also has to do with the north, but more on an eastern side, not the Mediterranean side, but an eastern side going to, as it says, the Jordan River. Verse 34. This border as well, it says, Veshav Hagavul, the border returned towards the west. To what place? And the west is also can mean to the sea, but not necessarily all the way to the sea, where it says, Aznot Tavor. So westward, not all the way to the city, but to this place, Aznot Tavor, and it went forth from there to where? Hukoka, and it struck, meaning it arrived to also Zebulun, that inheritance of that tribe on the south. And it says, and at Asher it struck, it arrived from the sea. So lower in that area it arrived towards the sea. Verse 34 in the middle. And in Judah of the Jordan as well, Mizrach HaShemesh, the shining of the sun, and this would be as well on the west. Verse 35. And the cities, and this is the word Mipsar, which is a fortified city. So the fortified cities of Siddim, Tser, and Hamat, Rakat, and Kinneret, which is mentioned several places in the Bible. Verse 36. And Adamah, and Harama, and Chatzor. Chatzor, a common name, a city in many different locations. Verse 37. And Kadesh, and Edrai, and Ein Chatzor. Verse 38. And Yeron, and Migdal El, Horem, and Bet Anat, and Bet Shemesh. Bet Shemesh, we know where that is today. We know Tel Bet Shemesh. If you come to Israel with us, we frequently go there and stop because a significant thing happened there, an event. So we know where the ancient Tel is, the modern city that encompasses it. So Bet Shemesh, and it says here, the cities, how many cities were to Naphtali? 19 cities and their courtyards, their places of administration. For this is the inheritance for the tribe of the children of Naphtali for their families, their cities and courtyards. Well, now let's move to the last section, and this is for the tribe of Dan. Now, remember something. The tribe of Dan, its land was near where we just concluded, by Bet Shemesh and westward. Dan was supposed to inhabit, and it did for a certain degree. Early on, it inhabited this place where the Philistines were. But we see, as we're going to be told, that they decided to abandon that and go elsewhere. And we'll come to that in a moment. But look, if you would, to verse 40. For the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families, went forth. The lot, what lot? The seventh lot. Verse 41. And it came about the border of their inheritance, Sorah. Now, today, there's a kibbutz there. It is also very close to Bet Shemesh, and we have this town, this area being known. Also Eshtaol and Ir Shemesh. So all of this fits with what we know today. Verse 42. And Sha'al Labin and Ayalon and Yitlah. Verse 43. And Elon and Timnah and Ekron. These are also places that we've encountered, and we see that these are cities that were shared. Verse 44. And El Tekeh and Gifton and Vaalat. Verse 45. And Yehud and Bnei Barak and Gat Rimon. Bnei Barak is a famous city today. It's an ancient one. It's near Tel Aviv, also on the west in this area where the Philistines were close to it, not necessarily in Bnei Barak, but near them. And we see that it's still going on today. And from the waters of Yarkon, this is a river close to Tel Aviv, and Harakon with the border, which is before, notice, Yaffo. So Hayarkon is a river that is in the north part of Tel Aviv, where Yaffo is in the southern part of modern Tel Aviv. So we see things, and when we look at this, we can look and have a great understanding of this allotment of land that's towards or for Dan. Now let's continue on to verse 47, where it says, And the border went forth for the children of Dan of these, and the sons of Dan went up, and what did they do? And they waged war, they fought with Lashem. And they took it, meaning they took this place. They struck it with the edge of the sword. And notice what it says in the middle of verse 47. And they inherited it. They took possession of it. So they left their allotment of land. And they went up towards the north, and this is in the far north, on the modern northern border of Israel today, very close to Lebanon, and not that far from Syria as well. And notice what it says. And they inherited it meaning this city of Lashem, and they dwelt in it. And they called Lashem, they gave it a new name instead of Lashem. They called it Dan. And that's why there's a place that we oftentimes visit, Tel Dan, And it says, as the name of their father. So they named it there, but there's a traditional tomb of Dan, and it's back in the original allotment of land. And this attests that they did take possession, at least partly, if not all of it, in that area they were supposed to. But because of the conflict with the Philistines, apparently they went up to a very good land, but not necessarily according to the will of God. They went up and they took possession of Lashem, and this became, for the most part, where the tribe of Dan settled. Look, if you would, to verse 48. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan for their families. And these cities, ones that we went through, and their courtyards. Verse 49. Now in verse 49, we're coming to the conclusion, and it says, and they concluded, literally they came to an end of inheriting the land according to its borders, meaning the borders of the land, the promised land of Israel. And the children of Israel gave an inheritance to Yahushua, this is Joshua, the son of Nun, in their midst. So recognizing him in a unique way, they gave him a special inheritance. And this was according, look at verse 50. Al-Pi, this is concerning the mouth, meaning according to the Lord. They gave to him the city which he asked, so he requested. And this was Timnath Serach in the mountain of Ephraim. And he built the city, and he dwelt in it. Now look at verse 51. Here it says, these are the inheritances, in the plural. These are the inheritances which Eleazar the Cohen, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers, according to the tribes of the children of Israel, that they inherited. Now we see something. As Joshua, the leader that took Moses' place, he also led in conjunction with Eleazar, the son of Aharon, who died in the wilderness, and he was the new high priest. So we had Joshua and also Eleazar, the priests, overseeing this with the heads of the fathers, meaning the heads of the tribes at that time. And it says, they inherited according to lot, and they did so at what place? All of this was determined at Shiloh before the Lord. And Shiloh is a place that they erected the tabernacle in a permanent location before moving later on the temple to Jerusalem. So the tabernacle for over 400 years was at Shiloh. And after it ceased, we have a time period, and then the temple was built in Jerusalem. So again, these tribes inherited the land according to Lot, by Lot, in Shiloh before the Lord. And this was all done where? Petach Ohel Moed, at the doorway of the tent of meeting. And this tent of meeting is another word, Ohel Moed, tent of meeting, another word for the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And it says here, and they concluded the distribution of the land. So again, all of this was done according to the instructions of God by Lot, meaning not by individual desire, but trusting God and relying upon him for the determination where each of the tribes would dwell. And the wisdom, and we'll conclude with this statement, the wisdom is, let God make decisions for you. Don't follow the desires of your own. That's usually rooted in sin. But be submissive, be responsive to the word, the instructions of God, that he might position you where you where He wants you to be, and that you might be doing the things that He would want you to do. This is how we invite God's presence, His power, His provisions, His joy, everything into our life through the spirit of submissiveness. And this is what's been emphasized in the distributing of the land by God to the children of Israel according to these 12 tribes. Remember, Levi, we'll focus in on him in the weeks to come. Until that time, may God bless you. Shalom from Israel.
Well, we hope you will benefit from today's message and share it with others. Please plan to join us each week at this time and on this channel for our broadcast of LoveIsrael.org. Again, to find out more about us, please visit our website, LoveIsrael.org. There you will find articles and numerous other lectures by Baruch. These teachings are in video form. You may download them or watch them in streaming video. Until next week, may the Lord bless you in our Messiah Yeshua, that is Jesus, as you walk with Him. Shalom from Israel.